HMS Sovereign of the Seas was a ship that would play a major part in both the doom and the salvation of the kingdoms of England, Scotland and Ireland, as they were known at the time. She came into being due to a very complex set of circumstances. Earlier in the 1600s, a Dutch author had penned the Mare Liberum, a text that claimed all of the seas were free to travel to anybody without hindrance. The English response, Mare Clausum, acknowledged that on the high seas this may be so, but that nations held sovereignty over the nearer seas to their coasts, in many ways foreshadowing the modern laws of the sea. This clash of words accompanied a more physical clash of ships, with various English ships being stopped, seized, or otherwise impeded, with little they could do in response. This forced King James I to start building the navy back up again, but his son, Charles I, inherited a mixture of shipping, some of which was very new and powerful, but other royal ships included a number who'd fought the Armada half a century earlier, and one mid-sized galleon that dated back to the reign of Henry VIII. A decade or so into his reign, Charles decided to expand the fleet further. But, having dismissed Parliament, he lacked the funds to do so, and so he raised a countrywide ship tax to pay for his new project, a move which was one of the main contributors to the English Civil War. But that particular conflict was still yet to come. Along with other warships, a great deal of this money was spent on the production of a single monstrous vessel, the brainchild of the Pett dynasty of naval architects, combining the ideas of the old great ships with the newer ideas of ships mainly designed for gunnery into one vast ship. So vast, in fact, that many believed she couldn't actually dock in any port in England. This minor detail didn't trouble Charles all that much, and she was laid down in 1635 and launched in late 1637, with a name to fit her stature, of course being Sovereign of the Seas. At just over 1,600 tons burthen fully loaded, she displaced twice as much as the average large warship of the day, but cost almost 10 times as much, in large part due to the vast amounts of ornamental carving and gilding that went into her, the final bill representing about 30% of the entire country's yearly tax revenue, or to put it in more modern but albeit somewhat imprecise terms, similar to the US Navy commissioning a $1 trillion warship. At a length of 160 foot overall and a beam of 46.5 feet, she was somewhat stouter than some of her contemporaries, but this was needed to support the 102 guns she carried, a vast range of cannon, drakes, demi-cannon drakes, fortified culverins, demi-culverin drakes, demi-culverin drake cuts, culverin cuts, and so on, all in bronze and giving her a broadside well in excess of double that which was typically considered for a first-rank warship of the period, along with being the first ship to actually carry more than 100 guns. Centuries later, HMS Dreadnought would cause shockwaves showing up in the 1900s. Scale-wise, Sovereign of the Seas was more like a ship the size and armament of Dreadnought showing up in the middle of the American Civil War. As it turned out, she was perhaps a little too ambitious, and some of the fancier upper works and the higher mounted guns had to be removed for stability reasons, which rendered her down to a mere 90 guns, at least for a little while, although this did have the effect of increasing her speed and agility somewhat, which was to stand her in good stead later on. Having in large part precipitated the English Civil War, she didn't actually do all that much in it, her scale making her somewhat inefficient for blockade or blockade-running duty, depending on the time period in that conflict, when the rest of the Royalist fleet was mostly made up of smaller and lighter vessels. However, renamed Sovereign, she would be brought back to full operational status as part of the Commonwealth Navy when the First Anglo-Dutch War broke out, becoming the flagship of the oddly titled General at Sea Robert Blake. Her first taste of action would come at the Battle of Kentish Knock, now carrying 106 guns, when she led a contingent of English heavy warships into a devastating cannonade of the disorganised Dutch fleet, before going aground on the shoal that the battle was named for, but it turned out she was strongly built enough to work herself free. Time and again in almost every major Dutch sea battle across all three Anglo-Dutch wars of the period, the flash of sunlight and gunfire would be seen as the gilded form of the sovereign plunged repeatedly into the Dutch lines, often fighting multiple Dutch warships single-handed and several times becoming isolated, mobbed and boarded, only to throw back her attackers, either due to the sheer size of the ship and her crew, which made her relatively easy to defend, or else dragging out the fight long enough for other Allied naval elements to come to her aid, resembling, according to the accounts of the period, more of a golden castle under siege than a warship. So fed up did the Dutch become of her that she was nicknamed the Golden Devil, and the Dutch fireship crews were offered a massive bonus should they manage to destroy or cripple her with their sacrificial ships. The Commonwealth gave way to the Restoration, and she continued to serve the now Royal Navy, with another rebuild seeing her become a 100-gunner, with a new name, Royal Sovereign, and most of her surviving gilded carvings being removed. In this form, she would outlast the entire Stuart dynasty, and fight her last battles, ironically enough, alongside the Dutch against the French in the 9 Years' War. Taken in for repairs in 1696, she was accidentally burned to the waterline after almost 59 years of service, but what was left of her below the waterline was salvaged for use in the next HMS Royal Sovereign, which would serve on for another 67 years. 4 years after this ship was broken up, a new HMS Royal Sovereign was ordered, which would lead the second column at the Battle of Trafalgar, with one or two unconfirmed sources suggesting some small part of the older ship was incorporated into this new vessel, which, if true, would potentially mean that some small part of Sovereign of the Seas fought on across 3 centuries and saw the Royal Navy realise the ambitions she'd actually been named for.
That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to comment on the pinned post for dry dock questions.